Dear friends, welcome to the channel The Eastern Front. Today I will tell you about the memoir of a German corporal. He began keeping his diary in the summer of 1941, when the 299th Division in which he fought as part of the 6th Army was preparing for an attack on the Soviet Union. In accordance with the plan of Operation Barbarossa, the division advanced south of the Pripyat marshes during stubborn battles. At the end of the same year, the unit participated in closing the encirclement ring around the Kiev, and subsequently in fierce battles near Stalingrad, in battles for Kharkov, Voronezh and Orel. With the help of his diary, we will be able to look at these events through the eyes of our enemy. Almost every day, without embellishment, he described everything he saw with his own eyes. 12 June 1941. Again, we are about to be deployed to perform another difficult task. I hope that everything that happens will take a place in my diary. In it, I will display daily events in their true form, without embellishing anything. I am forbidden to tell my wife about such things in letters, but never mind, the time will come and I will tell her everything. After a grueling transfer that took several days, we arrived in Lashov, located 8 kilometers from the Russian border. We marched through Apartov and Lublin to our destination. The heat and dust were terrible. Residents of Lashov, a tiny town in a characteristic Ukrainian style, are friendly and neatly dressed. The houses are small, single-story, covered with shingles. Here, the main building materials are wood and straw. Barns and houses made of wicker willow. The rooms, all through small and cleanly, always have whitewashed walls hung with colored woven straw mats. Stoves, walls and ceilings are painted with beautiful flowers. Bright embroidered pillows, curtains and rugs create a simple and at the same time pleasant, joyful atmosphere. We pitched tents in the barns, where finally we can count on a well-deserved rest and silence. 13 June. Transfer to Zamość to occupy positions. A stunningly picturesque city market. All through, I see the richly decorated Baroque facades of the Burgomeister's building for the first time. There are Russian churches everywhere with onions on the roofs. The names of streets and shops are usually in two languages, German and Ukrainian. 14 June. An order was received to proceed to the western Bug River. As part of a small reconnaissance group, I was ordered to map the enemy's positions immediately upon arrival at the place. On the way to the place, I see a lot of sappers busy filling holes in the roads. The local forest is already occupied by the Russians. Literally, a few dozen meters away, the Soviet flag with the hammer and sickle is flying. I don't want to think about what would have happened if the Russians had decided to send scouts to this area. We understand very well that this is quite possible. And then, what should we do? The Russian pillboxes are only 100 meters away, and from there our 10 soldiers and a handful of sappers are very clearly visible. The river serves as a state border. If the Russians decide to attack, we will not have time to leave, we have no transport. Maybe we're scapegoats, specially given to the slaughter of the Russians in case of our invasion. Similar things have happened in Poland. And what? Quite an honorable death sentence. But for now we are sleeping it off peacefully. They didn't even put up a combat guard. To what? It's all the same, what will be will not be avoided. My dear Roselle, if I had written about all this, you will have lost your peace forever. It's lucky you don't know anything about it. 15 June. The situation is getting more serious every day. Last night, Russian scouts were spotted on our shore, literally 2 steps from where we were located. Judging by the footprints in the sand, it was a group of at least 20 people. What a mess we're getting into. Do I really have to shoot at them? There is no way we can go unnoticed now. They track our every step through the stereo tubes for days on end. So we have to sneak along the shore secretly, like Indians, to complete the task. This is exactly how we will have to act tomorrow, in order to mark all enemy positions on the map and determine the sectors of fire for artillery. I want to believe that everything will work out. 16 June. That's really luck for us. I managed to carry out the order without any complications with the Reds. I already know the sections of the river that we together with the sappers have to overcome. And again, we are in the first wave of the attackers. Since the operation is based on complete surprise for the Russians, the attack is likely to begin in a few days. There is a lot of activity in the forest behind us. Heavy artillery is taking up positions. Tanks also arrived. And last night they installed anti-aircraft guns. But they don't sit idly on the side of the enemy either. The Reds are strengthening their positions. Noise is coming from the forest they occupied. It looks like they are bringing tanks to their starting positions. I am exhausted today. Even in the evening, the heat is unbearable. 17 June. It's raining. It's a real blessing for the local peasants. All the path turned into a knee-deep mud at once. At noon, our commander, General William Moser, arrived. He brought bad news. We have to stay here for a few more days. In the evening it cleared up, and a short walk along the bank of the Bug River relaxed my nerves, which had been stretched like strings in recent days. I already know the day of the attack. Everything will happen on 21 June, simultaneously on the whole huge front. What are the next weeks preparing for us? I remember my dear family with longing. I have repeatedly asked myself if I'm not just longing for the comfort of civilian life. I was thinking about it on the way to the fortifications at the Bug River. No, it's not about comfort. My thoughts constantly revolve around Roselle and my daughter Erica. I am moved to tears by her love in every line of letters. These two are the most precious creatures in the world to me, and now life has separated me from them. My thoughts go back to my parents, to my father and mother. They are also infinitely dear to me. We love each other very much. I remember with gratitude all the good that they did for Roselle and me. With God's help, I will overcome all the difficulties of the coming weeks for them. 18 June. Everything is very, very serious. Under the cover of darkness, our division is being reorganized for the attack. Today around noon, reinforcements arrived, units of the 528th Infantry Regiment, young guys with the unburned faces. The sun has barely touched them only in recent days. Yes, a soldier's fate. I think that the attack on the whole front will begin on Sunday. This newly arrived day brought me joy. 2 whole letters from my beloved Roselle. 19 June. My recent observations have led me to the idea that our sector of the front is waiting for a fierce enemy resistance. I wonder if our surprise-based maneuver will succeed. In the rear, local residents are forced to leave, to abandon property and household. Our troops will probably also have to attack tomorrow. What inhumanity to drive people from their homes. Women are crying, tearing their hair. There is crying all around and only crying, and there is nothing we can do to help them. The greatest battle of all time begins the day after tomorrow, 20 June. We leave the dugout. The division has arrived, and the last preparations for the attack through the Bug are underway, 21 June. The attack begins tonight at 3 o'clock. We are attached to the 1st Tank Group under the command of Field Marshal Paul Ludwig von Kleist. Our task, a quick breakthrough in the order of battle angle forward, despite the losses. For a moment, everything goes quiet. There comes a wonderful sunset calm. A few hours later, all these houses are on fire, and shell fragments are whistling in the air. Funnels will furrow fields and roads. The fact that we are again part of the offensive forces under Kleist's command is impressive. Goodbye, my wife Roselle. Goodbye, my dear parents. I'll be thinking about you tomorrow. Don't worry, the soldier's luck will not leave me. 22nd June 1941. Suddenly, at about 3 a.m., the first salvo thunders. Hundreds of guns of all calibers are firing. In response, the hail of shells from Stalin's arsenal is heard. Armageddon has begun. You can say a word in the thundering hell. Our rear is still sleeping peacefully, but death is already reaping the harvest. With stone faces we crawl along the trenches, counting the minutes until the order to attack the bark fortifications. We involuntarily touch soldiers talking, take hand grenades and check our weapons. At 3:30 o'clock, whistles are heard. We quickly jump out of hiding and overcome the 20 meters separating us from the boats with all our legs. We don't notice how we find ourselves on the other shore where the machine gun bursts meet us. The first losses. With the help of sappers, we are slowly, too slowly, making our way through the barbed wire fences. A few more steps and we get close to the first pillbox, keeping in the dead zone of shooting. The Russians are firing like mad, but they can't get us in any way. The decisive moment is approaching. The explosive sapper sneaks up to the bunker from behind and throws a bunch of grenades into the embrasure of the pillbox. Concrete shakes, black smoke billows out of the embrasure. We continue to advance, and by 10 a.m. the Movniki are in our hands. The Reds are retreating randomly under the onslaught of our infantrymen. Since our tanks are crossing the river rather slowly, we have been given the order to clear the village of the Russians remaining there. We are checking the whole village hut by hut. We see the terrible consequences of our shelling, but the Russians also didn't remain in debt. Gradually we calm down and get used to the devastation around. Not far from the customs building, dead bodies of Russians are piled up, most of them mutilated by shell fragments. There are also several civilians killed in the shelling. The bodies of a woman and her 2 young children, mutilated beyond recognition, lie among the scattered household belongings of their neat house. We captured the first Russians. Snipers and deserters get what they deserve. As soon as our tanks arrive, we continue the attack, but already supporting it with fire from hand weapons. We are advancing on Myshev, located about 40 kilometers from the front line. In one of the villages we encounter fierce enemy resistance. Helmut Pfaff with his 14th company barely repels the attack of Russian tanks. With heavy losses he is forced to retreat. According to his calculation, an attack of about 50 heavy Russian tanks is expected. By sunset we are occupying a circular defense. All through, everyone is exhausted from this first day of fighting. No one is thinking of sleeping. The night passes restlessly, almost without sleep. 23rd June. The morning begins with the shelling of light artillery. The Russian tanks never left the deployment zone. We are promised reinforcements by 8 o'clock, tanks and dive bombers. It really raises our morale. In the meantime, our friends from the Luftwaffe have prepared entertainment for us. On the low level, one after another, they sweep over our heads. One by one, 9 Russian bombers were shot down. Engulfed in fire, they fall to the ground and explode. This is the result of the masterful work of fighter pilots. At noon, the Russians begin a tank attack. Half an hour later, our counterattack follows. We have never seen anything like this before. 100 tanks have been thrown against us. But the most important thing is not to fear and keep calm. In a very short time we managed to knock out 4 Russian tanks. About 24 dive bombers, Junkers 87, hauled down on Russian tanks. In the afternoon, the outcome of the battle was decided in our favor. Over 60 tanks set on fire and dozens in immobility are scattered across the field. Most of the enemy units retreated to Babichi. We follow them around all night, which allow us to then surround them. 24th June. By the end of the day, it was possible to surround the enemy forces, and despite the desperate resistance of the Russians, narrow the encirclement ring. By 9 o'clock, the battle reached its culmination. Fierce repulse of the encirclement division worries us. The Russians, as if distraught, are rushing to our positions. By 10 o'clock the situation becomes very critical. The Russians managed to break through the encirclement ring in the southern section of the lowland. Artillery fire was opened, and a few minutes later shrapnel whistled over our heads. Clouds of black smoke are billowing into the sky right in front of us. Sometimes white tangles of shrapnel burst flashed by. The whole lowland is mercilessly watered by shell fragments. We make our way to the first houses of the Barbarian under the fire from the Russians firmly entrenched in positions. Damn mortar mines are exploding one after another, to our right and above us. Everywhere this howling, whistling is a disgusting, terrible sound of fragments of mines. With faces distorted with fear, we jump into the trenches of the Russians. Their fortifications are being hammered with the anti-tank shells. There is a crazy chaos around. The Russians are firing shrapnel at us, and a hail of fragments falls on us from above. Soviet fighters appear, an air attack. Thank God there are no losses. By noon we reach the center of the village. The resistance of the Russians is broken. An entire Soviet division has been defeated. The street is littered with the bodies of dead and wounded soldiers. But our losses are also impressive. And we are so tired that we can barely drag our feet. But forgetting about fatigue, we rebuild and continue to advance, without encountering enemy resistance to the village of Lokachi. We are clearly not expected to visit there. We are met with fierce machine gun fire. Damn snipers. With the help of hand grenades, we clear house after house from the Red Army soldiers who have settled in them. These fanatics mercilessly pour fire on us from under the collapsed roofs, which become graves for them. Others try to escape at the last minute, turning into moving targets for us. They fall dead right there in the streets from bullets or from the bayonets of our soldiers. An hour later, the village is already burning like match. Involuntarily, you ask yourself, seeing all this, and how many innocent people from the locals suffered. A terrible thought. Apparently, I'm not the only one thinking about this. As soon as the fire engulfs the first hut, we notice the corpses lying on the road. Soldiers spare no one and nothing, destroy everything they see. Soon a black pall of smoke covers the horizon. Apparently, in the acts of this senseless cruelty, all the monstrous fatigue from the endless marches and fights with the enemy is taken out. A single sniper shot brings you back to life. You forget about the devilish heat and everything in general. One infantryman once told me, "Understand, I'm just wildly tired. And now I'm like a cucumber. I feel like a human again." My stomach is cramping from these words. 25 June. What I wouldn't give for a few hours of sleep. We still managed to carve out a couple of hours, but then they lifted us up and ordered us to break through the enemy positions south of the Lutsk. Will we be able to force the Styr River?